Okay, up next, we need to talk about seventh chords. Now, seventh chords are not chords with 7 notes. That would be pretty extreme considering that so far we've only had notes or chords with 3 notes, right? Seventh chords are chords with 4 notes. So how does that make any sense? Well, let's just dive in. So let's make a triad. Actually, before we make the triad, let's make the whole scale again. I know you're getting sick of this, but it's important. And it'll really help us to see why we call these 7th chords and not 4th chords. So I'm going to make a C major scale, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. There we go. Now to make a triad, we use the first, and then we skip a note, third, and the 5th, right? What if we kept going? What if we went one more step? So we skip a note and we add the 7th. That is what a 7th chord is. So we have 4 notes, but the notes we have are 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th tone of the scale, right? So that's why we call them 7th chords. Fairly easy, right? So what do they sound like? Well, let's get rid of these other things. Okay, so here is a 7th chord. That's what it sounds like. Let's drag it out a little bit. Right, it's a fairly pretty sound. Now, the dangerous thing here is that there are actually 3 different kinds of 7th chords. There are a major triad with what we call a major 7th on it. That's what we're looking at here. But then we can also have a minor triad with a minor 7th. Gets a little bit more of a jazz sound. And we can also have a major triad with a minor 7th. That's what we call a dominant sound. That's called a dominant chord. We're going to talk more about that in just a minute. But those are our 3 different flavors of 7th chords that we encounter in the diatonic chord progression. So if we made the diatonic chord progression going all the way up, but we added 7th chords this time, we would have some major 7th chords. And a major 7th chord is this first one, a major triad with a major 7th. Goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's going to be a major 7th. Sometimes we'll end up with a minor chord with a minor 7th. That sounds like this. And that is a minor 7th with a minor triad underneath it. And sometimes we'll end up with a major triad with a minor 7th. And in a diatonic scale, that only happens once. There's only one chord that gets it. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. Now you might say to yourself, hey, you skipped one. What if we had a minor chord with a major 7th? That doesn't really occur anywhere in the scale. So we don't use that one very often. That one's pretty rare. And it's kind of a different kind of chord. We'll talk more about that, I think, not in this class, but in the next class. So those are our 3 different kinds of 7th chords. Next, let's go into looking at how to use them.